The resurrection confirms Jesus' claims about himself being the Messiah, God come as a man to save the world from sin. The resurrection confirms that. So how does Jesus raising from the dead confirm that he's God? I've actually heard people ask this. Okay, so he rose from the dead. Well, in the Bible, a whole bunch of other people rose from the dead. We don't claim they're God. Right? Lazarus rose from the dead. Do we worship him? No. You have other people, right? At the crucifixion, it says tombs are opened and saints were raised from the dead and went into the city. Do we worship them? No. You have in Acts 20, what was the guy's name? Eutychus, right? Paul was preaching, and there's this guy sitting in the window, and Paul is just going on and on and on and on and on, and Eutychus falls asleep and falls out the window of like a 3-story building. Falls out the window, lands, he's dead. Paul goes down, raises the guy from the dead, goes back in, keeps preaching. Right? We don't worship Eutychus. He was raised from the dead. We have to take into consideration not just merely the fact that Jesus rose from the dead, because God can raise people from the dead, but the fact of the situation of who Jesus was, what he claimed, the religious situation, the historical situation of what it was that Jesus walked into and what he was claiming about himself. It's not just that he rose from the dead, it's why he rose from the dead. See, because the resurrection didn't happen in isolation. You had 3 years worth of ministry where he was teaching and saying things and making certain claims about himself. And that ministry took place in a particular culture and a particular religious belief that is founded on what is taught in the Old Testament scriptures. So it's not just that he rose from the dead, but why? It was in fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies about the Messiah. And Jesus said, I'm the Messiah, and I will raise from the dead. The prophecies say so. He rose from the dead. So you have that context of the Old Testament prophecy. It happened in specific teachings that he was saying about himself leading up to the event. He was saying, this is going to happen, and here's why. And the disciples were confused until after they actually saw it happen. Jesus taught that he was God in the flesh, come to start the kingdom, to bring new life to sinners, and that new life was going to come. He would lead the way, and he did in his resurrection. That he would be the sacrifice to pay for our sin, to overcome death. His resurrection was a demonstration not only of his power, but of his purpose and his identity. They didn't understand what he was saying whenever he would talk about it, until after the resurrection and the pieces fall into place and they say, that's what he meant. That's what he was talking about. That is the proof of what he was saying back then. The resurrection confirmed Christ's identity and his teachings.